Welcome to another episode of AHRA's Medical Imaging Matters podcast. I'm your host, Jason Newmark, the Executive Director for AHRA. In this episode, we delve into the world of radiation safety officers and radiation safety team members and the pivotal and critical roles that they play in medical imaging departments every day. I'm joined by three very experienced leaders in this space. First, Will Breeden, the Chief Diagnostic Physicist for One Physics. Next, Dr. Paul Haney, the Corporate Radiation Safety Officer for Banner Health in Arizona. And third, Chris Mitchell, an active AHRA member and the current System Radiation Safety Officer at Kettering Health in Ohio. Together, we discuss the core responsibilities of RSOs and radiation safety teams, as well as insights on how they can add broader strategic value to medical imaging programs. We also discuss different career paths to becoming an RSO or a member of a radiation safety team. Then we talk about the different models for employment or contracting or even hybrid approaches to securing radiation safety support. And finally, they share perspectives on ways to strengthen radiation safety programs overall and how these efforts enhance patient and team member safety, as well as the overall delivery of high-quality medical imaging services. This is an essential area of focus for all medical imaging departments and leaders, and our guests provide a truly free-flowing and impactful discussion with many great takeaways and insights. I really hope you enjoy it. All right. Well, welcome aboard, everyone. Great to see you on what today for me is a Wednesday morning, probably a little earlier for some of you on the West Coast and the Midwest. But I'm excited today to talk about something that I don't think we talk enough about, which is sort of the relationship between medical imaging management and the radiation safety side of the world, both the radiation safety officer role, the radiation safety teams, how we integrate, how we work well together, and all things in between. I just really appreciate you guys taking some time to jump on and share your perspectives, and excited to sort of jump right in. So to start, why don't we just do some introductions, and feel free to share your background, where you're at, your role. It's an open book here as we roll forward. No particular order. Why don't we start with Will? Why don't you go first?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Pleasure to be here. My name is Will Breeden. I am the Chief Diagnostic and Nuclear Medicine Physicist for One Physics, which is a medical physics consulting company across the U.S. I reside here in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I've been for almost 25 years, providing medical physics support, radiation safety officer support throughout Indiana and the Midwest. So nice to be here.
Love it. Welcome. Do you ever do anything cool? Take some of that radioactive stuff, throw it in the back of the race cars, and just see how fast you can get them going?
That would be a hard no, but
yeah, I got a dream. It's like I got a vision of what's really going on there.
But there's always some crazy stories within radiation safety officers. You can tell some war stories. Not that crazy, but pretty close.
Funny. All right. How about Paul or Dr. Haney? What do you want to dive in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, my background is I've been doing this since 1989, so a few years. I started out as I graduated from college and I was in Air Force ROTC, and they said, okay, we got a job for you. It's called health physics. And I said, I've never heard of that. What is that thing? I couldn't even pronounce Rankin properly, to tell you the truth. So, but the Air Force was good to train me and sent me to school and it took many years to train me up, but it sent me to school. Later on, after being a health physicist and RSO I was doing diagnostic physics as well. After doing that for quite some time, the Air Force decided that, I needed more training, so they sent me to be a therapy physicist. And after 21 wonderful years, and I got to say, the Air Force, it was a kick in the pants. I enjoyed it. I loved it. But then they decided, they did start making us have to climb under barbed wire, and it's like, this is the Air Force. Do we do this? Okay. Well, they made us do that. I was feeling my age, and so I decided to retire, and I moved to Arizona, and I'm at Banner Health. I've been a radiation oncology physicist for them, but also right now my role is I'm the Corporate Radiation Safety Officer, which is over the whole system. We have about 600 hospitals and clinics. About 250 of them have either a radioactive material license or X-ray registration. So we have the whole spectrum from the little urgent care with one little X-ray machine to full university hospitals. And so kind of have a broad perspective.
Yeah. That's great. I think it's going to be really interesting to hear some of your thoughts just from your career path as you kind of progress through there, as well as that's, I'll say the scope and the span that you're talking about, the different areas and places where the radiation team jumps in there, or the radiation safety team jumps in there to help out.
Yeah.
All right, Chris.
I'm Chris Mitchell. I am not a physicist, and I don't play one on television either. I'm a nuclear medicine technologist by my background and been a nuclear medicine technologist since 1989 and have loved every minute of nuclear medicine. First became an RSO in 2001 at a small practice and started into my medical imaging management career while also doing radiation safety. So managing departments while also managing radiation safety programs. And I've been now full-time in radiation safety for about almost 10 years. I'm the System Radiation Safety Officer at Kettering Health in Dayton, Ohio. We have 8 hospitals, 6 medical centers, and 36 outpatient facilities. And whether they have radioactive materials, radiation generating equipment, we have responsibility for it all, just like Dr. Haney does. And we're actually got another hospital we're opening here in about 2 months. So
That's great. I think it's honestly really interesting as we dive deeper in a few minutes into what it's like for a technologist to work up the track and get into this field, right? Or just hearing just the different ways someone comes into this radiation safety side of the shop. So maybe let's go to core basics here, right? So some of the listeners may not understand all the elements of what a radiation safety officer does. I know, for me coming in, I was more the business side of the business track, and suddenly I had imaging and lab services and other things. And I remember when the radiation safety team, they were bouncing them around. Like, who do they report to? Where do they fit? What team are they on? And I want to get your thoughts on that. But maybe at the very basic, do one of you, maybe Will, do you want to take a crack and just sort of high level, sort of the core responsibility, the core role of what a radiation safety officer and their team does on a typical day? And, you maybe just speak to that at high level. We can see where that takes us. And feel free to jump in, Chris or Paul, as well. Trying to get the basic layout.
Well, I'd start by saying at the highest level, the basic definition of a radiation safety officer should be that individual who's ultimately responsible for safe uses of radiation, whether that's radioactive material or therapeutic uses of radiation or diagnostic uses of radiation within a healthcare facility or non-healthcare facility for that matter, to ensure that we're treating patients safely when we're using radiation, and that we're also keeping our associates and our staff, all staff, people that are directly involved with it, people that are indirectly involved with it, keeping them safe from, surrounding the uses of that radiation. And there's a broad spectrum, of what a radiation safety officer has to be responsible for. But ultimately, it's policy, radiation safety policy, decision-making, radiation dose monitoring of staff, radiation dose monitoring of patients, the performance and safety of the equipment that's being used, the security of radiation use within hospitals. That's kind of a broad brush. And then obviously training for all personnel that are going to be utilizing radiation or being the, encounter radioactive materials use within their facilities, training those individuals as appropriate based on their involvement with the use of radiation.
Yeah, I say I fully agree with Will. I fully agree on that 100%. I will add one thing, though, is when I talk to my CEOs of my hospitals, or I talk to my, especially medical imaging directors, I kind of put those words to them, though. I say, your name and address is on this license. You are ultimately responsible. I'm your technical expert. I'm responsible too, but you are responsible. And an imaging director, a medical imaging director, hopefully new ones very quickly find out that if they don't run the radiation safety program, do things like make sure their staff is trained. And if they don't make sure that the badges are actually going around, I tell them, well, that's not really the RSO who makes sure that they get delivered and returned to, we use Landauer and Miriam. We use both of them, get returned. I say, hey, imaging director, guess what? It's not going to happen if you don't do it. The responsibilities are so shared between so many people. But then I remind them, the RSO is your technical expert, and the RSO is definitely involved, definitely highly trained, know what they're doing. But guess what, imaging director, you're it. You got to make this thing run day to day.
100% agree with both of them. I'll add one little caveat to what Paul just said, because when you talk with imaging managers, imaging directors, it is definitely a partnership. I like to always say we hold leaders accountable. That's our job from a radiation safety perspective. For a lot of us, our names on the license as the person responsible, our names on the registration as the person responsible. But we can't be everywhere as radiation safety team. We need our boots on the ground, our imaging managers, our supervisors. They are the ones actually that are helping us on the ground bring that level of accountability. So if I'm having issues with a supervisor, I take it to the next level. If I'm having an issue with a director, I'm going to take it to the next level up wherever it needs to be. And sometimes you have to do that. But again, what Will and Paul said is 100% agree with both of them.
Yeah. Well, I like what all you guys said too, is that it's not only for the safety of the patients, because we're always thinking of that. I'm not saying that's wrong. We should be there first, but safety for our team members and the people that are there as well, because they're the ones that are scanning multiple times throughout the day and doing different things. I remember for me, it was always about the lead. That was the biggest thing that always came up. Where's the lead? Who's touched the lead? Who's not wearing lead? I have stories of in the ORs where the doctors I get a call from my technologist and they'd say, yeah, the doctor stood behind me. I'm like, oh, you're the lead now? That's not how we're playing this game, right? And that often was a call to my radiation safety officer, because to your point, partners, we'd go together to say, we're gonna address this, and this is why we're doing it, as much for your safety as everybody else's. But yeah, I was gonna ask you as a follow-up though, can you speak? I think you said this, one of you said, or maybe both of you said it, or all three. In my world, I thought of my radiation safety team in my health system. We were large. We had 5 hospital system, level 1 tertiary care, big. We had a lot of imaging, a lot of procedural based type of things. They're kind of split. There was the team that was sort of with our radiology department, and that was more around shielding, more around the badges, more about doing the checks to the machines, helping the radiologists with protocols, things like that. Then there was the therapy side. And I think, Paul, you mentioned that. Can you guys speak to that a little bit? Is it more common that they're separate, or is it more common you start to see them together? I'm curious, because it's an interesting piece that I always we were definitely separate. We had a whole different group that did the therapy planning and all of that, where the system I was at, right or wrong.
Yeah. When we're talking, let's talk at the physics level. When you have a physicist like Will and his crowd, when you have physicists, they're very trained in diagnostic or therapy. I fortunately had a chance to do both. It's getting harder and harder. See, that was before the American Board of Radiology required residencies. I kind of snuck in under the residency thing. So now it's almost impossible to do both. But having been both, they're very different, extremely different, very different. On the physics end, now these are your qualified experts. These are the ones that you call in to do the shielding. Both diagnostic and therapy do shielding. A lot of RSOs aren't qualified to do shielding. So now I've thrown in another wrench there too, because you can be the physicist with the training and the board certification and everything, and be the RSOs. They're qualified as RSOs. But you can also have other people qualified as RSOs that aren't to that level of, they can't do shielding. Radiologists, for one thing. Radiologists often qualify as an RSO, but they're not qualified to do shielding evaluations. They're not qualified to evaluate a fluoroscopy patient who received more than 5,000 milligray, and you need to get an exact dose. So very technical things like that. The physicist is important. The physicist is the person you need. And they also almost always are also an RSO. And so the RSO duties often are not quite, I don't want to phrase this wrong, but I would say quite as clinical. They are for staff and protection and everything, but where the diagnostic physicist is really focused on the equipment and the patient, and the therapy physicist is very much focused on the equipment and the patients, and the RSO is focused on the staff protection and the regulations and the licensing. And yeah, Will and Chris, you can help.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. I agree. For me, I'm classically trained in diagnostic and nuclear medicine physics. I am a physicist. I'm also a radiation safety officer. So I wear both hats. I can do a lot of the same things. However, I am not a therapy physicist. And so there's some things from a radiation safety standpoint I feel very comfortable with in the radiation oncology department. There's other things that I do not at all. And I rely heavily on my therapy physicist to help me in those situations, specifically in hospitals that we're providing that kind of RSO support for a whole plethora of things. So, to Paul's point, the physicist, if you're not in that specific modality, is a core member of your radiation safety team that you're always going to rely on to some level to help guide you on certain policy and certain training aspects. I have the therapy physicists provide specific radiation safety training for HDR because I'm not comfortable doing that, right? But I review it. I make sure it's being done. I make sure all of the topics are being covered that need to be covered. But as far as actually performing the training specifically myself, I have I kind of delegate that to a radiation therapy physicist who's more qualified to honestly answer questions that I wouldn't be able to answer.
100% agree with both of you. Sorry, I'm going to pop in here real quick. Being the non-physicist in the group, because my role really, I'm kind of that quarterback, that captain of the team where I'm making sure everything's getting done. So if I need a shielding design done, I'm reaching out to my physics team. We have a contracted physicist, so I'm reaching out to my contracted physicist. Our therapy physicists are in-house. We employ them. So our relationship is really more about ensuring that they're doing all of their quarterly checks, auditing them, ensuring all of the reports are coming in. They're doing all of their physics work, their QA on the machines, all of the, everything they're doing for the written directives, for the planning, etc. And then for my role is to make sure that they're doing their regulatory responsibilities as well, because that's where my role comes in, is making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do and ensuring it's done right. So, yeah.
And that really brings up something that really is prevalent in healthcare, especially with RSOs, is it's rarely the primary job. I know it is my primary job at corporate.
Mine too.
And yours too.
Yeah.
But you're covering a lot. You're not covering just one center. You're covering a lot. It's rarely a full-time job. That in Olive Banner, we have about 55,000 employees. There are 3 of us that are full-time RSOs. The rest, it's a secondary job. We do have our medical physicists, and they're like Will and his group. Yeah, you're a physicist. Oh, by the way, we want you to be our RSO as well because you're qualified. We have radiologists who are qualified, and we can get them qualified if they're not very quickly because their residencies teach a lot of radiation safety, and their board certifications typically have a lot of questions on radiation safety. So the states usually accept them as radiation safety officers as well. In fact, in Arizona, we do have a condition in the state regulations that says, well, if you're an authorized user on a license, you're automatically qualified to be an RSO too. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, that's kind of wild. I don't know if that's the way Ohio
is. The same Indiana way. Yeah, is. The same thing.
But so we have radiologists who are RSOs. They're not qualified to do everything a physicist does, but they are qualified to be an RSO. But we would rather pay our radiologists to be radiologists. So we come to people like Chris and say, hey, by the way, yeah, radiologists are RSO, but you nuke med techs, senior, in X-ray units, the senior managers for X-ray or CT or something, it's like, oh, by the way, Dr. So-and-so is the RSO. Oh, guess what? But you get to do all the daily work. So
they just sign their name on the reports. Yes, exactly. We've seen that too. And it's like, okay, let's move away from having the doctor because I still have to have somebody else do it. So
yeah. But we do like to pay our radiologists to be radiologists and to bring in to see patients, let's put it that way, or just to read films. But it really is so important that the work is spread out, and it can be overseen by an RSO or a physicist and an imaging director, but the work needs to be spread out. I had an imaging director who tried to put it all in one person once. What a disaster. And it was a senior manager, and holy cow. Person said, I'm done. And they're out of there. And all of a sudden, the imaging director calls me and says, oh, I just lost so-and-so. I said, well, that was your whole program. Now what are you going to do? And it's like, it was a struggle. Please spread it out. You can have this person handle the badges, have this person handle the, after they do a therapeutic, whatever, in interventional radiology, go scan the room, and usually it's the tech handling the material anyway, but spread it out. Assign one of your administrative assistants to make sure radiation safety meetings happen. That's and then get a team, get the whole team involved. And because if you depend on one person, not only are you going to drive them nuts, when they leave, you're up a creek. Yeah, it's really tough.
Will, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, from the physician RSO perspective, that's the lowest priority on their plate in a given day is that. And so, to that point, depending upon the size and the scope of the healthcare facility, whether it's an acute care smaller facility or a large place, when you have a physician as an RSO, they've got to have a strong radiation safety support from a physicist or from a nuclear medicine technologist who's qualified in radiation safety principles and practices, that they can do the meat of the work and then basically give it to the physician kind of on a silver platter and say, here's what's been done, here's our concerns, and then they can take it to administration as they need to. But like, you've got to have, for physician, I feel like for physician RSOs, very few have the time capacity to really function as a RSO should in the strictest terms. And having that support, having, whether it's a consulting physicist or an in-house physicist or a technologist, a nuclear medicine technologist or a radiation therapy technologist assist is really crucial.
Yeah, what I think what I'm hearing you guys say is sort of like this, the perfect world is more of a multidisciplinary team that has different levels and different parts of expertise together on this radiation safety team. It's interesting. I'm curious, like, those are expensive roles, right? And if you take you just hit the nuclear medicine technologist, usually some of the highest paid, or you take a radiologist, high paid, physicist, they were making as much money as some of the senior administrators in my organization. So do you ever see situations, I'm curious of this, of how people are making a case to have these dedicated positions, right? Like creating a role for someone on that team. And then maybe you guys can speak to that along the same lines of your experience with fully employed models where these folks are employed versus contracting with someone to do the work for you outside versus the hybrid model. Sort of like, I think these things kind of tie all together. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
Yeah, we have all those models in Banner Health. We have all of them. We have some in-house RSOs. Like I said, we only have a couple full-timers, but the rest are additional duty RSOs, and they do it very well that are employed. When we need technical expertise, and a lot of the hospitals, even when some of us physicists are in town, we have them contracted. We have hospitals in Colorado. They're all contracted out. We love the physics group who does that for us. I mean, they're fantastic. And so we have all of them. I don't know if there's an advantage from one over the other, to tell you the truth. I think it's very situational. I think it's very much, how is the hospital or clinic being run? What do they need?
Yeah. What are their uses, right? Like, what are they using? Yeah. Are they doing theranostics? Are they doing Lutathera procedures, Pluvicto procedures, Y90 procedures, HDR? Like, as you increase the uses of radioactive material and radiation at your facilities, is really going to kind of dictate and guide you. Are you going to have a dedicated in-house physicist? Are you not? I think those are an in-house RSO versus an outside RSO. And not to say outside consulting RSOs can certainly provide that level of support, but it's got to be regional, in my opinion. Like, you've got to have enough support that you can contact those individuals on a routine basis when you have questions, because I know we're getting into this world now where theranostics is going to be everywhere. It's not just going to be at the large healthcare organizations. It's trickling down. And in order for it to be successful at the smaller places, they're going to have to beef up their radiation safety support that they may not have needed in the past.
100% agree. I'll say this for Kettering, when I came on board 7 years ago, we had 6 different radioactive materials licenses with 6 different RSOs. And within a year and a half, we had systemized it. We have one RSO on the materials license, which is myself. We're a broad scope now. So we have all of our sites, all 8 hospitals, almost 9, 5 clinics, all on one broad scope. And then we have the X-ray registrations, which we have 50 of those, where I'm the individual responsible for radiation protection, that's what we call it in Ohio, the IRRP. And then I have one of my team members. So we were able to go from other duties as assigned for all of these RSOs to one RSO with 2 rad safety techs, because we proved that we could manage that entire piece of it easier than an imaging director doing his other duties as assigned, which is what we were seeing. So little different model. And we have all of those things, Will. We're doing all of those types of therapies, Plus, we have a gamma knife, so we have that increase fun.
More piece.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, when we were doing the prep calls, I remember this and I put an asterisk next to it on my notes. Sorry, you saw me leaning in. I was looking for a note. Paul, I think you mentioned this. So we were talking about different roles for radiation safety officers and different pieces. And I think you mentioned the MRSO, as in the MRI safety officer role, which spun me because I wasn't thinking of someone from this team as that person, right? I was thinking of like an MRI tech or a team lead. Can you just speak to what I think it was you, right, Paul, that mentioned that you had something here or some experience?
Yeah. We have hopefully we're really trying to have a strong MRI safety program, and so we've set up training to train our own MRI safety officers. Now, the MRI safety officer, I really like the way the ACR outlined how an MRI safety program should be set up, and the reason why I really like it is because it says, okay, doctor, radiologist, you can be a qualified MRMD. You're the MRMD, and you are fully responsible for everything, the safety. But we're going to have an MRSO who is essentially one of the techs, and they're going to be trained. So we got to have training. So we've set up our own training, but there's some outside training as well. And just throw in and so we train them, and then we encourage them to go to the American Board of MRI Safety and be board certified. And we have several of those. Okay. And then they have the radiation safety expert, which is the physicist. So the day-to-day stuff is handled by the tech who's trained as the MRI safety officer. We have the doctor who's, okay, doc, you're in charge. And whenever anything on our screening shows up as a red flag, our techs are going to come to you because you got to sign off on that. You got to review that, doc. So very involved there. MRSE, the physicist, the MRI safety expert, gets called in occasionally. Gets called in when there's something so tricky that they need a little extra help on. And so they're good. So as an MRSE myself, I do the training, but for the MRI safety officers, but it's kind of rare they call me for an actual MR safety expert kind of thing because they know where.
Are you the corporate MRSO then, Paul? Are you the corporate MRSO?
I'm the corporate MRSO too. Yeah, okay. I'm the corporate MRSO and the MRSE, but our techs. In fact, we have had such great success. We have hospitals we had one of our larger hospitals with 55 techs. We trained them all as MRSOs. Why? Because MRI is terrifying right now. MRI is
every time you're on the news, there's another story of them, and it's just terrifying, right?
You've got manufacturers of devices who are kind of relying on us and the patients as customers to test whether they're safe or not. I mean, honestly, if you look at how things are approved and when they are MRI conditional, a lot of times the manufacturers, they don't know. They throw it out anyway. I won't get into that.
It's a rabbit hole. I would just say to all radiology, healthcare administrators, I can't express the importance. You've got to have an MRSO on site, at least one at your locations. To have one, I think they can cover multiple locations. Those days are gone. And as you get into larger places like level 1 trauma centers, you get so much pressure from ordering physicians. They don't care. They just want that exam. They want that study. They don't care what this patient has, a neurostimulator or an external fixator that may or may not be safe. They want it done. And it all falls on the technologist and the radiologist who's interpreting it. And most people don't know that the radiologist who reads that MRI exam is medically legally responsible for that patient's safety. And they may never even see that patient. They may not even ever know this patient had a device until after they're reading it. So there's just so many levels of complexity with MR, and compound the fact that you have device reps now that are wanting less and less involvement of being on site. They want to be remote when they interrogate devices or when they consult on whether a patient's safe. They don't want to be in-house. So much of this falls on the technologists. You've got to have an MRSO. And then the key with the MR safety expert is to be that backup, I feel like, for the MRSO, and be the support for the MRSO and step in and back them up when there's not a safe condition to image a patient and say, no, as much as this patient needs this study, it's not safe to do it.
Right.
I love that, and I wish I had all of that. I'm a credentialed MRSO, so I'm the de facto MR safety officer for our network. But I want what Paul has at his
Train them all.
organization.
Train them all there. Yeah.
We're
That's great.
pairing you up here. Right?
Yeah.
this
Holler.
is-
Hey. Oh, fine.
Now I'm gonna
Bring
come
me
back
out to
up.
Ohio. I'll come train all your folks. Great.
Okay.
I'll
Hey, don't
Just,
tempt me. Don't
I
tempt
know,
I'll
right?
go
me.
to
I
Wright
think a deal just
Patterson.
got
I'll
made right here on the
I'll just
call.
throw up a tent in the fam camp. I can be there at Wright Pat. I'll just come on anyway. But
Okay.
there's another problem with MRI that we haven't quite hit, and that is we rely on patients to know their history enough to tell us if they have implants. Oh my gosh. Now, one thing we also do in Banner is we have a quarterly MRI safety meeting throughout the entire system where we get together and we talk about near misses. We do have in our entire system, we do have a couple burns every year, and we talk about why that happened and what we can do. But see, one thing we can rely on is we got to rely on that patient to tell us. We had a guy who, after the tech was so good, the tech, this gal asked him 3 times, "Do you have anything foreign in your body?" No. "Do you have anything?" Finally, after the 3rd time, she just said, "I just felt like I needed to ask one more time. Is there anything you weren't born with?" And the answer was, "Oh, yeah, I got some shrapnel in my leg." And I'm like, wow.
Oh my!
Okay. And so she calls the radiologist.
For the listeners that didn't see the reaction, there was a lot of "oh my goodness" faces.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. When we have more time, let me tell you about the lady who used to store her cell phone under her wig and went into. Anyway, we'll do that another time.
Right. You can make a whole list.
Wow.
Of things.
It had a funny little burn going on, but anyway.
But I think what's interesting is the reason I brought it up. I just think it's from an administrative standpoint, right? I think it's always interesting that you don't just think of the RSO as the physicist or just dealing with the badges or doing it's a little bit of everything, and they're not only complementary, but they are essential parts of the team to ensure safety across all elements, right, of the whole process here. And I think that's what I keep hearing is I'm hearing you guys talk about the multidisciplinary and having the different roles and encouraging technologists to think about, hey, if you don't want to scan patients every day, there's another career path for you. Mm-hmm. Chris is a great example, right? I want the listeners that are out there, if you want to track Chris down afterwards, we'll get you his contact info. But I think it's really interesting because I remember hearing about it when I was overseeing those big, large places. It didn't fully gel. It was something I didn't fully understand, right? I was like, wait a minute. I always thought it was the physicist. Like it didn't track. And now I'm hearing more and more of that. Just raising awareness. Bringing up the MRI is a great example. MRI, there's no radiation. So when I hear radiation safety involved with MRI, it wasn't intuitive, but I'm hoping that people appreciate that it is. It's all safety related, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can see it being quality and safety related as well, because that's like a lot of what our job is really not just RAD safety, not just MR safety, but quality and safety in general. A lot of us get pulled into those things. And so, it's a lot more than RAD safety.
Let me do this just because I could see there are so many elements here that I want to dive deeper. I'm like, we could have a whole discussion just on the MRI side, and that'd be a whole piece. But just come looking at time, trying to think things through. Maybe I'll have each of you guys, if you get a chance, if you guys just give some last minute thoughts, and it could be anything from some things we talked about, or maybe it's if you have thoughts for people out there that are trying to enhance their radiation safety program, or maybe they're trying to advocate to create these positions, right? To bring people up and give them a little career path in the organization to join that team. Or does anything you have any thoughts on what you want people to hear about or think about when you're thinking of the radiation safety program overall? And then maybe in the middle of that too, if you want to mention to people how they might get a hold of you. So maybe start by just saying, here's, you can read off your email, whatever. We'll put it in the information, but I want to make sure people understand how to reach you all, and then dive into sort of like your final thoughts. Does that work? And we'll just kind of round table it really quick.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe I'll go reverse order from earlier then. So Chris, I'll go you first, and then I'll circle around.
You can reach me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest one. I would say from a RAD safety perspective, it has been one of the most fun jobs that I've had in my career. Frustrating at times, annoying at times. You could put all of those words in. But what I have seen, especially from how we do things within our program, is it's really collaborative between all of the imaging team. When we have inspections, we have great rapport with all of our inspectors from the state level. We are the leads for our hospital accreditation as well. So we don't have Joint Commission, we have ACHC. So we work very closely with our imaging leads for hospital accreditation time. And we have 4 windows that are open right now. So we're working with the teams to ensure that everyone is ready. So it's really, sometimes I think of the RSO is you have the RSO that is spelled out for radioactive materials for a radioactive materials license. And there is definitely what's required there. And then you have a job called radiation safety officer that encompasses a ton of stuff. And depending on where you're at and who you work for, it could be small, which I am very jealous of those folks who may just have the radioactive materials portion and not everything. And then you have those that have everything. And, you know, it's these are the fun things that we think about all the time.
Cool. All right, Paul, thoughts?
Yeah, just first of all, email is best for me. I have LinkedIn, but I look at that about once every other month. I just don't get into LinkedIn much. But by email, PAUL, just paul.haney, HANNY, at bannerhealth.com. Shoot me an email. Be happy to talk to you. Yeah, just to piggyback off what Chris says, I totally agree. You know, for me, if I'm advising a new imaging manager on radiation safety, I say, number one, make sure those relationships are good. Relationships with your staff, relationships with the radiologist, relationship with the nuc med docs, relationship with the state. We have a wonderful relationship with our state. It is nice to be able to be on the cell phone. If I need to call the state director, now he may not always answer, but I can call him for a 30-second chat if I need to. Build those relationships, and the key, and spread the work has got to be spread out. And with the work so spread out, it is critical to have a physicist who knows what they're doing in radiation safety that you can tag. And now they don't have to be there all the time, but that you can get a hold of, and that maybe they've helped you set up the program. And then in some of our clinics, like if they just have one x-ray, they see me once a year. I pop in once a year. They got an x-ray machine. We do their 5 things they need for the state, and then we get out of there. So it's different for every type of clinic and hospital, but always every single one needs to have a connection to a physicist who understands radiation safety, and that could be diagnostic, therapeutic, or whatever. But that qualified individual is so important to make sure. I mean, it's going to make you sleep better at night. I mean, it really is, because I have someone I can actually call. Don't need them every day, but I can call them if I need them. And I think that between the relationships and then having that key, I think that's it.
Great.
Yep.
All right, Will, you get to wrap us up and give some final perspectives.
Really, really good stuff today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. You can find me as well on LinkedIn. Just make sure you look for the older William Breeden, not the younger, handsome William Breeden. That's my 21-year-old son. But yeah, I mean, so here's a couple of things I'll leave everyone with who may watch this. It's really good periodically to really evaluate the state of radiation safety in your healthcare system, whether that's on a local level or a much broader level, regionally, nationally, however big you are. Administration, communication, and backing from administration is key. So as a radiology healthcare administrator, the RSO is relying on you to make sure that the folks in the C-suite understand the importance of this, and that that safety culture starts at the top and ends at the end user. And it's got to be, everybody's got to have buy-in on that. You know, evaluate your radiation safety officer. Your radiation safety officer needs to be engaged. They need to be readily available. They need to be knowledgeable and have the expertise. If you are using outsourcing, you know, looking to outsource your RSO, they're more than likely that the individual you may be looking at is probably on another license somewhere, maybe doing that. Ask for references, reach out to those other locations. What's been their track record of relationships with the state or with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission? Have they had successful inspection outcomes? Is there RSO? Is that individual readily available? Do you have their cell phone? You know, when emergencies, when the real crunch time, you know, safety issues occur, are they available, and how do they handle them? I think that's important. And I'll lastly say communication is the key. Really having communication between all the members of the team that we've all talked about throughout this podcast. You know, communication is key.
Well, I really appreciate it. There's a lot of information here. I mean, the stuff that I'm learning as I'm rolling down, hopefully the listeners will pick up on that. I hope folks that are out there, if you have questions, please follow up with any one of these three, or you can reach out to me and we'll connect you that route. But I appreciate our sponsor, One Physics, for getting us all together and just you guys taking some time to chat. So looking forward to do this again, maybe down the road, but I really appreciate it. So thank you. Thanks for listening to Medical Imaging Matters, a podcast from AHRA, the Association for Medical Imaging Management. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. AHRA is proud to be the trusted association for medical imaging management professionals, offering career development programs, a comprehensive selection of educational conferences and seminars, networking opportunities, award-winning publications, the certified radiology CRA credential, and so much more. To discover all AHRA has to offer, visit our website at ahra.org. Until next time.